All right, welcome back everybody to day 19 of Foundations of Programming. We're gonna pick off from where we left off yesterday. We were on the verge of finishing lesson 12, which is the searching, sorting, and recursion. Um, we're gonna talk about recursion for the first hour, finish off what we started, do one more assignment, and then we'll move over into the final lesson for Foundations of Programming. We talked a little bit about the cost stack, but very briefly. We didn't go too much into it, and I want to talk a little bit more about it. We up to this point we know that we can call a function within a function, right? And it takes two different elements. Who can remind me what these elements are? There's two elements that make up a recursion function.
Oh, the end case and the function call?
Close. The base case
Base case.
and the function call, or the recursive call, right? Um, and you need both of these to work. One, the base case is like a conditional statement, and then you have the recursion call for it to call itself, because without the recursive call, is there really a recursive function, right? Um, and here, what we're gonna do is I'm gonna set a base case. We should all be looking at my VS Code. Is that correct? Right.
Yes.
Let's talk about what happens if you mess up this base case. Well, I want to print num. So I'll say if num is greater than 0, then I want to, let's say, return num, else print num. And then we call, I guess I call this count, right? I'm gonna call the function again, count num minus 1. And we'll change this call right here. If num is less than or equal to num, then I want to return num. Else, then I'm gonna go into my recursive call to see how this works. Count 5, and just so I can say time here, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So it works as intended. Now, what happens if we never fix this? What if I mess up this function by not updating the recursive call? Well, what happens? Well, when I run this, we end up getting an error. It does run for a bit, right? We see here all these statements. I don't know how many times it did it, but definitely a couple hundred times. We actually can't see here. It says previous line repeated 992 more times. So it did run it somewhere around maybe like 100 times or 1,000 times roughly, somewhere around there. And then we get a recursion error. It says maximum recursion depth exceeded while calling a Python object. And this is actually kind of new. This wasn't called recursion error before, if I remember correctly, or maybe I'm just misunderstanding it or getting it confused. What it should be called is stack overflow. Stack overflow, right? What happens is it opened up multiple call stacks, right, over and over and over again, which is diving deeper to a point where it couldn't open up anymore. It was just way too much to keep track of, and we ran into an error, right? We see maximum recursion depth exceeded, right, while calling a Python object. So there is a limit to this, right? We can only call a function so much before it can't go any deeper, and it's a waste of time, right? It's exceeding the amount of time that we can run this. Maybe taking a different approach would be more suited to the problem itself. And yes, this is where the website got its name, right? The Stack Overflow like forum page that you've probably seen and used before here and there. That's where the name came from, right? The recursion Stack Overflow error that you would get. So there is a limit to this. And that's why it's important that we ensure that whenever we are writing our base case and our recursion call, there is a way for this to return to itself or close out these calls, right? Because there is no infinite to this. There will be an error. Python tutor walkthrough. I want to get rid of the slide because I'm not a big fan of Python tutor. Who's used Python tutor before? Okay, it's useful, a bit useful if you've never coded before. But up to this point, you have coded a lot. It gives you an example of how it works. And then you can start in what language you want to do it. We're going to do Python. And I don't like it mainly because it has a lot of ads. And I'm actually quite surprised right now that I'm not getting any ads right now. The last time I used this, there was ads everywhere and it was really annoying. But anyways, the way this works is that you can write code and it will execute the code line by line and explain to you what is happening at every part of the execution. For example, I can say define count up, takes in a num, and I'll say for I in range of num, print I, and then I'll call the function passing 10, and I can visualize the execution. Notice that it goes to the first part, and then you move it at a line, right? So the first part was step 1, it define the function, so it doesn't go in depth into the definition until we start calling it. The next step it does, it uses that function, right? That's step 2. Step 3 was it goes to the definition of what function we're calling, right? And then you can see here how it goes through every single line, how it takes num, I is equal to 0, print output goes back up to line 2 because it's going through a for loop, I is now 1, so on and so forth. You can see how it goes back and forth within this for loop to show you every single step of what's happening through your code. So if you've been coding for as long as you guys have to this point, Python tutor is not that useful. If there is something that is just very complex that you want to see, especially if it's like recursion, this is where it can come in handy. So if you want a better explanation of how recursion works, what is happening, I recommend this. So we can take this and let's go back in here. I'm going to subtract 1 and I'm going to call count passing 5. Visualize execution. There's like 31 steps to this. Lord. Notice the first time it calls the count function num is equal to 5. It fails the base case. It prints out 5. It gets to the recursive call. 5 is now 4 because it's minus 1. It goes back to the definition of count because we called this function. And you can see how this recursive call works. Every time that it calls it, the num is updated. It's showing you what's outputting. So it's helpful for stuff like recursion where it can be very difficult to keep track, like the call, where is it in the call stack. But besides that, I'm not a big fan. Now we're starting to see some ads here. They're typically worse, but it's on the curriculum, so I am demonstrating it here for you guys. If you guys want to use Python Tutor, now you're aware of its existence. And for anybody else seeing this, it's there for you. Any questions, comments? All right. Well,
Oh, sorry. Okay. Can you pretty much do the same thing with like a debugger and VS Code, almost in a way that you're doing with the Python tutor walkthrough?
that is a great question. And I'm gonna be completely honest with you, Jason, very transparent. I've never used a debugger tool for VS Code. We don't use it in the curriculum. We don't use it in the cohort. I was never taught how to use it. I just been um Give me a second. I just been going, doing it the hard way, I guess, for lack of better words, with no assistance. I just look at the code, I read the errors, and I find it. But I don't know how it works. I apologize for not being able to give you a better answer. I will do some research on using the debugger tool, but maybe, right? I just never used it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. All right. We're going to talk about recursive mult.py. This is one of it's one of the last ones, second to last problems that we have. I'm gonna cover one, and then I'm gonna leave the list max and is decreasing to you guys to do individually if you would like to. But in regards to recursion, I don't want to do too much on it. If you want some more work on it, you can definitely try list max and it's decreasing. But let's look at recursive mult.py. I think this is a little bit annoying if I'm being honest with you. Recursive mult. Here we go. It's not going to take too long, but you're going to write a recursive function and then multiply. That takes two positive integers as parameters, right? And returns the products of those two numbers. So what essentially you're going to be doing is you're going to be, stand by, I'm going to have to sneeze. Excuse me, thank you for the patience. You're going to create the function that's going to take two numbers and multiply them without actually using the asterisk to multiply, right? And returns the product of those two numbers, the result from multiplying them together. Your program should not use multiplication. It should find the result by using addition to get your thinking on the right track. Here is a small little demo. This is what it looks like. 7 times 4 is equal to 7 plus the result of 7 times 3. Well, what is 7 times 3? It is the result of so on and so forth, right? Of 7 plus 7 times 2. And you can see how the recursion works here. This is literally what the call stacks are doing. So this is a pretty good hint and a big hint. I'll give you guys 10 minutes to give it a try, and then we'll come back and move on to the remainder of today's lesson. Jason is muted.
I'll share my solution.
Let's get it.
Oops. Okay, so pretty much what the function was, I threw this. So for this case, it's through the 7 as well as 4. So 7 times 4 is 28. So considering we're going through the function, I guess 4 times in this instance, if int2 equals 0, which would be 4, return 0. Otherwise, int1, which would be 7, plus pretty much 7 plus int2 minus 1 recursively, and eventually that adds up to 28, 21, 14, and 7. Using addition.
That's what I'm talking about. That's exactly how this should have been done. Good stuff. I think you could have gone away with like equaling to 1, since 0 won't do anything. So you could just done like equal to 1. But besides that, yeah, it was perfect. Good stuff. How do you guys feel about recursion so far? Was it a little confusing at first? It feels a little bit better. Get kind of give or take.
Yeah, I mean, I actually think I think you helped me understand it a lot better over the last few days. I was just kind of
Okay.
intimidated by it before, but now I kind of feel like I'm starting to understand it quite a bit better.
Okay. Well, that makes me happy. I'm glad. That's all I can hope for as an instructor. So good stuff. As I mentioned, there is list max. It is decreasing. You guys are more than welcome to do that on your own terms as extracurricular work if you guys like. Just for the sake of time and for the sake of the fact that recursion isn't that big of a issue. Recursion honestly is either one of those like either you get it or you don't get it, right? It's there's like a running joke that for you to understand recursion, you need to understand recursion, which makes no sense, right? So it's either you get it or you don't get it, and it's as simple as that. But without any more waste of time, let's go ahead and continue. That's going to conclude lesson 12, searching, sorting, and recursion. Let's go ahead and move forward. Stand by. I need to find the curriculum. Where is my schedule? I thought I had it. Okay. Back to sharing. So we are now going to talk about the last lesson, which is going to be Python regex and ASCII values. Awesome. Before I continue, how do you guys feel? You guys feel confident? You guys feel good?
Yeah, I'm feeling quite a bit better, and I've been working through a lemonade stand, and I feel by working through it a few times, I'm getting that better. So I'm feeling good. Actually, I feel like front end's weaker for me for some reason. Like front end just doesn't click with me very well, but I kind of felt like when I moved to back end, I was a lot more comfortable.
Okay. Tim?
Um, other than recursion, which I still don't like, I feel pretty comfortable with most of it.
Okay. Yeah. Uh, so quick disclaimer, it's not exactly backend stuff that we're doing. It's just now like front end oriented. Everything that we have been learning will be used when you start actually diving into the concept of working with the backend of your application. Your backend consists of like your database, right? And how it manages the database and how it works with it. Um, that is a work in progress. I know I received feedback about it that they would like to get some small scale stuff like that in FOP. I just don't know how complex that might be for a new
Yeah,
person.
I guess once we moved to object-oriented programming, I felt like it was more structured, and I kind of feel like with front end, it's like a lot's just thrown at you, and it's harder for me to grasp it. I guess like CSS and just putting the pieces together, just it seems harder for me.
That's completely understandable. I feel the same way too. I cannot stand front end. I am not. I think I'm a creative person, but artistic wise, I don't know. Like formatting and whatnot, I can't make things look quote unquote pretty or visually appealing. But up to this point, you guys should be fairly comfortable with Python. Can we you guys say that confidently? Like, hey, like compared to where I was 2 weeks ago, like Python actually was not a horror transition because it looks like you guys are kind of killing it.
Yeah, I'm really glad I did this foundations of programming. I think I'm gonna feel a lot more confident going in than if I hadn't done it.
You guys, if you think about it, you've done HTML, you've done CSS, Python, and JavaScript. Right, that is 4 different languages. HTML and CSS aren't really considered like coding languages, but they are a form of a programming language, right? But that's 4 different things that you guys have been focusing on since you guys started in a span of 4 weeks. So going into this immersive program should feel a little bit easier the first month and a half because you already seen a some of it, so you'll feel a little bit more comfortable once you start getting doused with information. But up to this point, I mean, you guys have been doing great, man. You guys have learned. If you guys have stopped and thought about it, like everything that you've covered, right, from HTML, CSS, API, CRUD applications. Um, you've talked about a whole new programming language, which you guys for the most part didn't really know too much about Python, right? Then you started working with object-oriented programming. You made a small game, like now we're in data structure, data algorithms. You've learned a lot. So there is a lot that you guys have been taking in and making your improvements. I see the improvements compared to day one, and now you guys are significantly better programmers than you were before, which is awesome.
I think I'm
But
going to
without,
struggle going back to JavaScript, honestly. I feel more comfortable with Python than I do with JavaScript.
it's nice, right? I'm telling you guys, like, it's easier to grasp. It's more human readable. Um, I feel like it looks cleaner too, significantly cleaner. But that's part of the game. You're gonna be switching back and forth.
Yeah,
So
I almost feel about the same. I think JavaScript and Python are, I would say, relatively similar. Confidence, I guess, in navigating them. But if I don't use one for a while, then I'll get a little bit rusty and have to go back, that kind of
yes,
thing.
it happens. It happens. Even on myself, right? Every now and then, I'm like, oh man, how do you do it again? And I have to like take a step back and kind of let something click before I start coding. But yeah, it's gonna come time. You get better at it as you go. But all right, let's go ahead and move forward. Let's talk about lesson 13, Python regex and ASCII values. I asked yesterday if anyone has heard of regex yet. And you guys said that you've heard about it. Probably use it a little bit.
Yeah, the free code camp, when he did the pre-work and we're going through that lesson, I think that helped quite a bit, get familiar with it.
Yeah. So honestly, then in that case, this should be pretty straightforward and should go rather quickly. But regex is just shorthand for regular expressions, right? It is a method of searching a string for specific characters. Now, I'm not a regex expert. I know enough to get by, if I'm completely honest with you guys. The most I've ever used it was working with user authentication, right? Uh, because when you create like your user login, right? Have you guys ever heard of SQL injections? I never heard of that. Okay. So SQL is a query language that essentially, query just being a fancy parameter for like looking up, right? Querying a database, looking through a database, right? SQL is the language that it's called SQL, right? And there are specific commands that in this language that you use to search through a database. Some of these commands can drop an entire database as well. By drop, I mean delete, right? So there's commands that you can do like that, that you can use that can wipe an entire database. This isn't really a much more. It's not that much of a common issue nowadays. More earlier on in the time, when internet started becoming a thing, or was a big issue, and cybersecurity was not as big as it is now. But what happened is when you work on the user login, user verification, what do you think is happening? Right? You put in your email and password. The front end is grabbing this information. If you guys recall, we can create forms or input tags, and we receive the values from this input tags. And then we use this information, right? The email, the password, and we add it into some kind of request, right? We call request, which we will then make the request to our backend. We will send this request to our backend in the form of some kind of like API request, right? And it had all this information. Well, before, when you didn't have some kind of security or restrictions, people would be able to add raw SQL into the login forms. So what would happen when you would receive this information and put it in a request? It would send it to your backend. It would grab this information and it would query the database, right? And the command, instead of being in the email, it was like drop the database. And people would do stuff like that, right? Or they would query and grab people's information, stuff that they shouldn't have access to. So how do you prevent people from adding things or words or content into your username fields or your password fields or any kind of form that you have? How do you prevent them from adding stuff that they shouldn't be adding? Well, that's when regex can help. Regex can be used in a way that we can create some form of pattern to specifically grab only thing that is a valid email, right? Now, nowadays there's many variations of emails, right? You have like your basic ones at gmail.com. You have like .hotmail or at hotmail.com. Some are not just .com, some are .org. Military at army.mil, right? That's what R was in the army. So there's different variations. So you would require a very complex regex pattern, but the point of the matter is you can create a pattern that will filter out all this other malicious input and only grab what you need, right? The correct input that you're looking for. And that's where you will use regex for the most part in your the immersive program. You're going to be using regex to create your user validation to ensure you're not getting something that you don't want that might break your application. So, obviously, you can use regex in other scenarios like solving some kind of coding challenge. I don't like it. I feel like it's cheating. You know, people might tell you, okay, well, now do it about regex if you do that in some kind of coding interview. They might actually just instead be impressed of how, efficient you were and how you use your resources. I don't know, but it's a double-edged sword. But regardless, we're going to talk about it, right? So the first time you see it is not in the immersive program. You guys said you guys worked on the pre-work. Well, we're going to talk a little bit more about it. It is used for a multitude of different things like replacing, removing, finding, and matching parts of a string. So remember, strings are immutable. So whenever we use regex, we're essentially recreating a new variable with whatever we're trying to find or what we're trying to replace and so on and so forth. The idea applies to regex expressions. If you use regex to remove all the integers from a string, you didn't filter the string, you simply created a new string without any integers. So regex does not change the laws, the laws of mutability. Common use cases: user validation, right? Entering, I forgot how this entering a valid email, right? You can create some form of regex that's only going to take something that has numbers and letters before some kind of at. What is it? What's this called? It's not an ampersand. It's an at sign, right? Is there a specific term for this?
Yeah, it's an @ sign.
Yeah, it's an at. Okay. Add example. Well, what else? It requires a dot and then some kind of suffix, right? I don't know if that's the correct term. Something that ends with. So, and if you don't get what you're looking for, then you get an error message. Please enter a valid email. So you can use regex to create user validation. This is only an intro to Python's regex module. Don't expect some super in-depth, lesson. Just enough to kind of get you comfortable with working with regex. When working with regex, the first thing that you need to do is you need to import the regex module. It's not something that you by default have. It's something like importing random or importing math. If you want to use regex in your code, you need to do import RE for regular expressions. When using regex on a string, with backslashes, just use a raw string. So, for example, you have /t. This is supposed to be like a tab. You can use the R to kind of grab that as well, like the raw string, right? Whereas this is gonna take the /t as literally like a tab. Okay, let's go ahead and kind of get this open up. This is gonna be a code along. So make sure that you guys are within the lesson 14. Yeah, lesson 14. And create a folder where we can kind of just code along the different things about regex. I'm gonna say touch regex example.py. And we're gonna open it up. All right. Now, before I dive into regex, I want to talk about a very helpful website, which I'm sure you guys use, and I believe it's called Regex 101. Regex 101 is my go-to. I think it's Regex 101, and there's another one. I think it's Regex 1. Regex 1. Which one was... Okay, yeah, no. This one can go away. Regex 101 is the one that I like the most. Have you guys heard of this one or seen this website yet? Okay. Regex 101 allows you to format regex patterns or expressions without having to use some kind of code, right? Open up some kind of Python file, import stuff, whatever. The way that works is, first and foremost, when you come here, you have to put the quote-unquote flavor, which is Python, right? And then what are you trying to find? Whether you're trying to match, substitute, list, and I forgot what unit test does. But by default, we have match, which is typically what you want to use. You want to match whatever your regex is to the string that you're asking for. On the right side, you have the explanation of the regex. You have a match information, so whatever you're matching for, and then you have a quick reference guide too. I tend to forget stuff. But we're going to be using this regex 101 to kind of come back here and test stuff out. Definitely bookmark this. This is a very useful website to kind of come back to and use once you start having to build regex. But I just want to kind of open it up here, have it ready, so whenever we have to come back and reference anything involving regex, we'll use this. All right. So, as we mentioned, we're going to import RE to use regex in our Python file. The first one that we're going to use is sub, right? Sub is going to be the first function from the regex module that we are going to be using. And you might already guess of how this works. The re.sub takes a couple things. The first one is a pattern, right? Pattern is the regex pattern, right? This is how where your regex should be going at. The second one is going to be replaced with. Replace this with what you want to substitute it with, right? Hence the name sub. What to replace with. The next item you give it is the string that you want to be looking in. And then we have a couple other things like counts and flags. And these are optional. So we'll leave this at the end. But you need pattern, what you're going to replace it with, and what you're looking through. So pattern, replace, string. Right? So with this in mind, let's create a string. We'll say some string. And it helps to code along. This string will say, hey, look at this awesome sentence. Which, by the way, I am going to the slides. So if you want to follow along, you can just have the slides open too. This is the string that we're going to be using to kind of go through and replace stuff with. Well, as we mentioned before, regex doesn't mutate the string, right? It recreates a different version of the original string, but it doesn't change the original, right? It creates a new one. This string is going to be called no hey string, which you can probably guess what it's doing. And we're going to call the regex.sub method. And right now, very simple. We're not going to use a regex pattern. We're going to keep it very straightforward of what we're trying to substitute. You could put a regex pattern in here, but we're going to keep it simple for now. We're going to replace or substitute the word hey It's going to be replaced by an empty string. Well, what do I want to, filter? Well, I want to filter the sum string variable. And if we print no hey string, let's see what it shows. We get, look at this awesome sentence, right? But notice it's a little bit off. There is, it looks like 3 spaces, give or take, between the look. Well, because there's 2 heys, it replaces the first hey with a space. There's a natural space already built in here. It replaces the other hey with a space, and then there's a space naturally between this hey and look. Right? So therefore, as a matter of fact, I don't think it replaces the space. I think it's empty, or it's no space at all. So I think it's just 1 and 2 spaces here, which is it right here. Right? I think we put a space here. We'll see it speak differently. Yep. So it replaces with nothing. Therefore, just removes it. Right? It replaces it with nothing. But we still have 2 natural spaces here, which is why it looks a little bit off. Well, what if we want to only get rid of 1 hey? As of right now, it defaulted to include all heys that it encounters in my string. Well, that's when the extra arguments or parameters come into play. As we saw earlier, you can see here when I kind of go back into the sub method, there's another argument called count. Right, this is an optional one. I see dot strip. We could definitely use dot strip, Tim. You're absolutely correct. That is a perfect way to solve this. And before we continue, let's do that. Dot strip. And the spaces are gone. All right, so dot strip is a good way to get rid of those extra spaces. Well, with that in mind, let's go ahead and continue with the count. All right, so I got rid of all the heys, but I don't necessarily want that. I want to say, hey, look at this sentence, not hey, look at the sentence. So we can use that optional method, which is count. By default, it grabs everything, right? But at this point, I'm going to go ahead and override it and set it to 1. And now, when I run this, it's going to counter the first hey, it's going to remove it, but it's going to keep the rest of the sentence, and it's going to strip that space between both of these heys that were naturally here. There's another one. Another optional parameter, and this is flags. I'm not quite sure exactly all the flags that go into this. There are, I think there's a table that you can find within the regex module to show you all the flags you can use. I'm not too familiar with all of them. Let me go ahead and look up real quick. We can look at it together. But re.sub flags. You can see the Python document has the RE section. There it should be a flag section here. Checking for pair mention. There we go. Module content flags. So there should be a couple flags we can use. And I don't. Okay, here we go. I never really use these flags, but you guys can look more into them. I don't even know how to look deeper into this. It's re.ascii. Let's go into re.sub. I wonder if we can find it. re.sub. Here we go. Flag 0. Okay. There should be a section within this one where it shows you the flags. Here we go. The expression behavior can be modified by specifying a flag's value. Values can be of any of the flag's variables combined using bitwise or the pipe operator. I'm sure you can dive deeper in here to different flags, but we're not going to do that. I just want to show you that if you want to learn more about some of these methods and what they do, you can check it out. I'll be right back. I have to sneeze. Excuse me. I'm allergic to work. I'm sneezing a lot. All right, let's continue. So there you have it. We talked about the sub. We talked about flags. Oh, well, some of the flags. You can look more into these. We can probably even go into definition. It might even show you the different flags. I'm not quite sure. But you do have the option of doing flags. We can specify how many of the haze we want to capture. Or by default, it grabs all of them. All right. Another example of using this, which you can see on the slides, and I won't code it out because we already did it once. But here we have the sum string again, and this is different. Whereas the first example, we specifically use the word hey, right? We use the word hey, very specific HEW. The regex is being used in place of that. I am no longer specifically looking for the word hey, I'm looking for this. Well, what does it mean? What does this code mean? Well, it's going to, if you're familiar with ranks, and we'll get more into this, right? You won't understand it yet, but these different patterns, right? When I say patterns, I mean like this caret, the plus sign, the brackets. These all have very specific meanings, right? Plus sign being like one or more instances. The caret will stand for at the beginning of our string, like the string has to start with this. So there's some very specific meanings to these items. And then we have that we're looking for A through Z lowercase and A through Z capital case, right? And we'll speak more on how this is working in a little bit, but let's see how that actually looks like in code, right? And I wasn't gonna do it, but I think this is a good time to do it. We'll say apple, and it's not exactly spelled like apple, so I'm gonna try my best to ensure I grab everything exactly how the slide has it. We have, oh, I'm dumb. The output's already on the slide. But yeah, so you see here that it's printing out the output, right? We have apple, banana, kiwi, and melon. So what happened was that we were able to grab everything that is a letter from A through Z, either lowercase or capitalized, right? We replaced that with what seems to be an empty string. And it's a little kind of confusing, actually, now that I think about it. How
I just don't remember what the caret sign means. That, I mean, because it seems like the letters are being preserved and it's all everything else that's being filtered out.
I remember it stands for start with. And we'll get to that in a bit. It stands for start with. But what I'm a little bit confused here is we're trying to grab everything that's A through Z, capitalized or lowercase. And what this is saying is I want to replace it with an empty string. Therefore,
Is the caret sign maybe a not? So if it's not A through Z, capital A through Z in space, then it's replaced.
is it not? I'm pretty sure it was start of string. Don't doubt me, Jason.
I mean, caret
Uh,
inside a bracket.
yeah. No, I think you're right. I think that's probably what it's doing. Carry entire brackets, probably why a character not in the range of A to Z. You're absolutely correct, Jason. You can have my job. But yeah, no, you're absolutely correct. The carry, it looks like it has different meanings here. Using this quick reference guide, when used inside the brackets, it stands for a character not in the range of A through Z, which is what was confusing me because I thought we were trying to grab something because normally the carry is the start of the string, which makes sense now, right?
Yeah, it was the brackets that threw it off.
Yeah,
Carrot
definitely the
means something
brackets.
else. Carrot means something else with or without the brackets.
Because right when we saw here earlier is that we were trying to replace hay with nothing, and it returned it without the haze, right? So logically speaking, this should have done the same thing. It should have returned everything that's like an exclamation mark, a number, or the at, the pound sign. It shouldn't have returned words, but that was the missing link here. That the caret within the brackets, the square brackets, it changes the meaning. It's saying grab everything that's not within the range of A through Z, lowercase and capital case, and replace it with no value. Therefore, removing all these special characters and just leaving behind the alphabet characters of A through Z, lowercase or capital case. Sound good? All right. Meta characters. So here we see the first table of what these characters mean, right? There's definitely more. And as we just saw, there's different ways of using them too. But this is a very small and brief table. The first one is the brackets, which is a set of characters. And actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull this to the side. And we're going to talk about them as we learn them. Let's actually see it in real time. Right, we can get a set of characters using brackets. Right? The expression was A through M, the example. So let's create a string. Hey, my name is Roger. Right? As we see here, the brackets stand for a set of characters. The set of characters is arranged from A through M. Right? And here's the string that I'm testing it on. It's able to capture the E, the M, the A, the I, and even the G, right? Because all these letters are from the range of A through M. Now, I want you to note right now, and you'll see more why. Notice how the color does change, though. It's kind of alternating. It's a light blue, a dark blue, a light blue, a dark blue, a light blue, a dark blue, right? And it does that on purpose. These are different matches, right? And I'll show you what that means. Right here it says match information. These are all individual single matches that are unique to themselves, right? It's not just one big match of all the characters, it's multiple matches. And that'll make more sense if we see the other meta characters. Right? What we can also do is use a backward slash to signal a special sequence, right? And a backward slash by itself really means nothing. And I'll get to what this means by a special sequence, but the example that is used in here is the backward slash D, right? You guys don't know it, or you might not know it, but backward slash D is going to capture everything that's a digit, right? Everything that's a digit, if I remember correctly. We can see it here. Any digit, right? So these are the special sequences, and there's multiple of them. Notice that the capital D is any non-digit. Lowercase s with a backward slash stands for any white space character, where the capital S with a backward slash stands for any non-white space characters. So the backward slash is the start of a special sequence But what really identifies what type of sequence it is what comes right after that backward slash. Then we have the dot, which, as you've already seen in multiple different other places, the dot typically stands for either all or everything or any. And in this situation, the dot means for any character except new line character. So what this is saying, look at the example. It's HE dot dot hello. Well, let's change this to dot. Notice that by just adding the dot, I grabbed every single item within the string. Did not matter what character it was. Did not matter if there was a space. It still grabbed it. Right? Now, let's use the hello. Right? The hello. Maybe not hello. What can we use? Let's use the word pet. I want to grab anything that adds an ET. If I specify pet, I grab pet. But what if I put met? Right? What if I put get? It's not gonna grab it. But if I put a dot here, it does not matter if it's pet, if it's met, if it's get. The dot will work on anything that's not a new line character. Right? And that's a good time where you can use it, where you want to grab any word that ends with ET, but it doesn't matter what it starts with. We can start it with whatever. And that's what I meant by the example of HE dot dot O, where we want to grab whether it's hello, hepo, hemo, hedo, heso. It don't matter. These are not, none of these are real words, but no matter what, it's in the center, it's gonna pass as long as it starts with HE and ends with O. The only thing that really matters is how it ends and starts. These two characters in the middle can be anything, whatever our heart desires. Right. So the dot is any character except the new line.
It's only single characters. It's not like an asterisk.
Correct.
Okay.
It's only single characters, right? So it's not referring to as many times or how many times you want to capture something. It's talking about what characters it can capture, right? Not occurrences, but which one it can capture, right? Next is the caret, which is the one that I got a little bit confused with, right? Because as you can see here, it's a little misleading. The caret means starts with. Now, if I have, hello, my name is Roger. Here's hello. What if I had hello at the end? Well, I don't want to capture hello at the end. Right? I only want to capture if it's in the front. Well, the caret does that for you. It's going to specify that the string needs to start with hello. Notice that we capture only this one and not this one because this is at the end of the string. So the caret is for start, or what we can do, if we want to specify the ending, we use the $sign. And nope. I guess both sides worked. No, it did not. Okay, it does have to be at the end. Okay. $sign will specify that it ends with something. Right? Either it starts with or ends with. And we saw hello. on both ends of it. It'll capture one or the other one. Now here comes the occurrences. We talked about how to capture specific characters, whether they're at the end, at the start of the string, what type of characters they are. But let's talk about occurrences. We have 3 of these. We have 0 or more occurrences. The asterisk stands for 0 or more occurrences. The plus sign is for 1 or more occurrences. And then the question mark, it's almost like an optional one. It can appear or it might not appear. Who knows? Right? 0 or 1 occurrence. Let's see that. For the 0 or more occurrences, we have HE dot asterisk O. Well, what is this capturing? Well, we're able to capture hello. The L, it was captured once. Right? Notice that we are able to capture the remainder as many times as we want. As long as it starts with HE, ends in O, it doesn't matter what we put in the middle. Why? Well, because I have a dot which is going to match any character. Well, how many times do you want to capture that? Well, whether once, I'm sorry, either no times or unlimited times. Right? So this is saying is as long as it starts with HE, it ends with O, you can put anything between these 3 words, any character, as many times as you want. Right? So the asterisk will capture 0 or more occurrences. Let's use the plus sign. The plus sign, as we mentioned, is 1 or more occurrence. So notice that we don't capture it when we only have HEO, whereas before, with the asterisk, HEO, it captured it because the asterisk was 0 or more occurrences, where the plus sign is 1 or more occurrence. So because there is nothing between HE and O, it fails to capture the string because it needs at least 1 occurrence of some kind of string in the middle of both of these, of all 3 of these letters, right? So therefore, it needs something like L, right? Or an H, whatever you want to put in here. It needs at least 1 occurrence of some character or space between the letters of E and O. And then finally, we have the question mark. 0 or 1 occurrence. 0 or 1 occurrence. So here, it'll capture HEO because it'll capture HE no matter if there's no occurrence of a character between them. Or we could add 1 occurrence and it'll capture it. But notice, if we go above 1 occurrence, we can't grab it anymore because it's 0 or 1 occurrence. Well, when does that help? Well, what do we have like my name? Roger de la Garza. And I am looking for A through Z. Right? I'm able to capture not capturing it. Why are you not capturing it? Why is it not grabbing it? I have to figure out why it's not grabbing the space. What was the space for? I guess I could do that. Yeah, I don't like that. Mm. All right, I'm getting sidetracked here. Sorry, my ADHD. I just quietly started going into this. Okay, well, what were we talking about? We were talking about the where is my slides? Okay, yeah, we were talking about the 0 or 1 occurrence, and using it in a name is helpful. I don't know why it's not working. We're just grabbing the space. I'm doing something wrong with the syntax, but you can see there's a space. Maybe some people have spaces in their names. They might have a middle initial. So sometimes they have one, sometimes they don't. I don't have a middle initial. Some people do, right? But not everyone's going to add a middle initial to maybe their sign up for, right? Their profile. So you might have the option to possibly have that middle initial added within their name, right? So that's a good occurrence. The next one is the curly braces, which stands for exactly the specified number of occurrences, right? Whereas before we use the asterisk, the plus sign, and so on and so forth. Instead of leaving it up to wonder for one or more, you can specify, hey, there has to be 2 occurrences. Notice here the curly braces with 2 occurrences of any character. And we say any character because there's a dot here. It's dot curly braces 2. Right? So 2 of any character has to be between the letters of E and O. Right? So we can specify the number of occurrences. We can also do an either or. Very similar to the pipe methods of JavaScript, right? Where we use that as an or, right? We can use that here in regex to specify I want to capture either false or stays. So you can capture the pattern of these 2 words, one or the other. And then capture and group, and we'll talk about this one a little bit later. But let's go ahead and take a 10-minute break. Time is 6:41. I went a little bit past 6:30. Let's come back at 6:51 and we'll continue with today's lesson. All right, let's go ahead and continue. So some examples of some meta characters and how to use them. Here we have the first example that we saw before, right? Very similar to using the sub method. We took a string. We passed in the pattern that we're trying to look for, which is the word program, and then what we want to replace it with, right? We replace program with dance, therefore coming with learn to dance because dance mean is cool. Now, that's not very, that's not exactly what we're looking for, right? But because of the word or the string, learn to program because program mean is cool, and it's going to encounter the string pattern of program, very specifically the pattern of the word program from start to finish. It encounters it twice. The first time it appears on itself, and then within the word programming, you have program. Therefore, it's going to replace both of these instances with just the word dance. Now, how can we fix this so it's a little bit more dynamic, right? Well, we do that by using some of these meta characters. Here we have the string, once again, the very same thing, but the pattern that we use is different. We start with program, but we give an optional instance of the ending of mean, MING, in the event that we encounter the word program or programming, and we can replace it accordingly. And now we get learn to dance because dance is cool. Now, it's not perfect, right? But it's a little bit better than it was before. But the power of the specific meta characters allows us to have optional, situations. You can also do this within a function. How you do it is it's up to you. This is fine as well. You'll be doing it in a function in the in your Django application as well. But we're able to create a replace method. You pass in the word that you want to match in. And not to get deep into the woods of how the dot group method works, but essentially using these parentheses, you add things into a group. Very briefly, we can kind of see that as well. Here, if I add the string of learn to program because programming is cool, and now I use the regular expression that they use, which is the word program, but I add meaning at the end of it with parentheses. These parentheses, how they work is they start matching things in groups, right? It's not just a match; it's a group, right? And notice here that we are able to capture the match of program twice, right? So we have two matches, program one, more match one and match two. But notice that the parentheses, it's not a match, it's a group. And essentially, it matches where's that? What does it return? I'm going to show you what it returns. Does it show it here? It returns something very similar to a list of all the groups that it encounters. And that's what it is essentially doing in this piece of code that where's it at? Yeah, right here. If match dot group, the group, and then they put 0. 0 return dancing, or return dance. Right, and notice that this time they have something different. The return is learn to dance because dancing is cool. So what happened when it ran the re.sub method? Instead of replacing it with a very specific string, they passed in the function here. Right? They pass in the function replace. By default, when it runs the sub method, it's going to look for this pattern of programming. And then it's going to run the replace method. Whatever comes back from the matches is being used in that. It's only going to have one match, which is going to be at index 0. Right? That match is the word programming. And it's going to replace it with either dancing or dance. Right? Depending on what it captures. Right? Whether it's dance, program or programming. Right? If it captures programming, it's going to return dancing. If not, then it probably captured just the word program, therefore it returns dance. All right, so it does one or the other. If the match that they encountered is the word programming, we're returning dancing. Else, I want to return dance. Make sense?
Yeah. If there's no match recovered, you said it returns something like it stores in something like a list where the index in this case is 0. But if nothing is found, is there still an index 0, or just it goes to the alternate return dance?
Nope. It just goes to dance. If match.group 0 is equal to programming, return dancing. Else return dance. This doesn't pass.
It won't throw an error or an exception because group 0 doesn't exist.
No, it does exist, right? But okay, let me explain it. It's gonna run the re.sub, right? It's going to replace every situation that it encounters with program. Some of these are gonna have programming, some of them are just gonna be programmed, right? We don't have a count here. You remember the count parameter, which is count 1 will capture like one instance. Because we don't specify the count, it's going to capture every instance of program, and some of them will have me, some of them won't. The first time it encounters program,
No, I get that. I'm saying if you had this defined method or function replace, but then your string wasn't learn to program, it was learn to run because running is cool, and it's still looking for programming and program, then it wouldn't find a match. Index 0 wouldn't exist. Would it throw an exception, or would it automatically go to the alternate case?
that's a good question. Let's see. Let's look at this to maybe explain a little bit more what match is. I want to print. How can I do this? I wonder. I don't think this will work at all. No. Okay, how can I do this? I want to show you what match really is. I wonder if I can say, oh, well, this is different actually. Let me, let me a second. I'm trying to see how I can show you match. How can I show you match? Well, let me rephrase what I was trying to get at in regards to this match or what the modules are doing. And I think it'll make more sense if I show you, where's it at? Not replace, find all. There is almost like an object type. It has a couple attributes. One of the attributes is dot group, right? It'll make more sense once we start seeing the other functions, but that's what essentially we're doing here. They're calling the dot group attribute from this function itself. And I don't know exactly the nitty gritty of how this function is working, because notice that look at replace. There's nothing being passed into replace. They're just calling the function replace, and it's working, right? We don't have. Notice that we put parameter in here to be match, but we're not calling the function with a match inside. So it's a little bit of regex magic, and I don't, like I said, I don't know the actual like nitty gritty of how it's working under the hood, because it's not a conventional function, and you can see that right here just for the fact that the way they're calling this function isn't the traditional method of how we call this function, where if you pass in parameters into the function definition, you kind of expect to get those parameters when you run the function, or now you get an error, right? There's a little RE module magic that goes behind this, but in short, there is the ability to check the groups, right? There is an attribute that goes to this function. They have certain attributes. By default, it's empty, right? And that's kind of what it's doing here, where it's checking if there's anything on index 0, right? And if there is something there and it's equal to programming, I want to return dancing, else return dance. So you're able to check the dot group because it exists. There's just probably nothing there if it doesn't capture anything. I hope that makes sense in some kind of way. I was trying to show you visually because there is a way to access the grouping of it, but it won't come until later into the other type of methods that we're going to encounter. Does that temporarily answer your question, Tim?
Yeah, it's fine. I also just changed the code and tested it, and it didn't change anything or throw any errors.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go ahead and continue forward. We have example of flags parameters. Okay, here's one. So I don't use these often. This one, as we see here, they're still using the sub method. Notice they're using the pipes, so we can either capture I or love or to code. It can capture
Hey,
either one.
I guess just what I'm looking up, match object, or I should say dot group 0 means if you have the parentheses 0, it means the entire thing. So I guess maybe it's doing programming in general, with the 0 parentheses, the whole object versus, the else would be just program, the word itself. Because how the MING is optional. I just wonder if the
Yes.
0 parentheses is essentially saying the entire word versus, else would be just the smaller, the non-optional program, substring.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, like
I mean,
I said, I don't know how it's working underneath the hood exactly.
yeah, I think we just need to play with it probably to figure it out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like it would become a little bit more easier to understand a little bit further through class, and you'll see what I mean, hopefully.
All
But going back to this, here we're using flags, which is not a big thing, but notice that they're replacing either words anywhere between I love to code with the word of ski, right? It doesn't on both of these, but the difference, notice, is that here is that the I love to code within some string is all capitalized, where in the pattern that we're looking for, we have it lowercase. So there is some flags. Here we have one flag, for example, which is a ignore case. And like I said, I don't use this often, but here is a perfect example of it. Is that you can run this sub method and it's going to ignore whether the item we're looking for is capitalized or not, right? So before, without that flag, it didn't capture and replace I love to code with the word ski because it couldn't find it, right? Because the pattern that we added was all lowercase. Where here, it didn't care whether our pattern was lowercase. It still took it, right? Because we put ignore case within the flags. Therefore, replacing the words of I love to code with ski, 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 ski. Right? So there's other flags. You can look at them. As you saw earlier, I don't even know them from the top of my head. So if you want to see what you have to your ability or optional for you, definitely check it out. We have the sub module. We also have the replace module, which is fairly similar. We can replace certain words. Notice here that they call the sum string, and this is not regex, I believe. Yeah, okay, this is not. I knew it wasn't not regex, right? This is standard to Python code. As you use one of those built-in methods, you have like the dot replace, right? You probably used it before where you replace a part of the code with something else and then returns a string. As you've already seen from the example of the regex module and using the sub method, there's other arguments that we can pass in within the sub, like the count. We can specify flags. We can specify a very specific pattern. So it's a lot more versatile. So in case, which I'm pretty sure Tim will probably have this question, because he's the one that typically asks, like, why would I use this if I could just use the other, right? Well, it's one is a little bit more powerful than the other. The find all method scans the string from left to right. So we talked about the sub. Here's the find all method. It scans the string from left to right, searching for all non-overlapping matches of the pattern or string that is passed in, and it returns a list of matches. So this one, notice here we have hey, you, yeah, you, do you. You appears 3 times, not exactly back to back. There's some space in between them, but it does occur 3 times. You can use find all to see where it appears, right? And this is probably very similar to the regular method, built-in method called find, that's going to find the first occurrence of a word. We'll find all will return to you a list of all the occurrences that it finds through a certain sum string. I don't know. There's other parameters that go into this. You can definitely check it out. There might be like some very specific unique flags you could probably do with, which would be pretty cool. But you can use the find all. Find all characters alphabetically between A and E. So notice that too. A through E, and it finds the letters, right? Specifically A through E. It returns that list, right, of when it encountered E first. Notice that's in order, right? The words from A through E, or the letters from A through E, the first time it encounters any of them is within hey, so it's E. Then encounters E again and yeah, and then it's an A and yeah, and so on and so forth, right? You can find digits as well, right? So you owe me 20 doll hairs, bro. I don't know why I get him on roll this. But you owe me 20 doll hairs, bro. And it finds the digits of 2 and 0. Notice that they're split up. It's not in one. By the occurrences of any number within the string. Right, singular numbers. Some special characters. This kind of builds onto the special character start of the backward slash that we saw in the first table. The lowercase d matches all digits from 0 through 9. We talked about the dot one already, which is all characters except new line. The capitalized D matches a non-digit. And notice that we also have here the alternate version of typing this out. If you want to find every number from 0 through 9, right, you can either use the backward slash lowercase d, or you can specify in brackets 0 through 9. So both of these will achieve the same outcome, right? You can either do lowercase backward slash d, right? Or you can do the 0 through 9. So you can be very specific or use either or. Same thing, right? You can specify a non-digit with capital letter for D, or as we saw earlier, we can use the caret within brackets to specify everything that's not 0 through 9, right? So we do that for digits, and we have that also for spaces. So we can match a white space character or match non-white space characters. And we have some examples here. Just from like the top of my head, I know the backward slash T is for tabs. Backward slash N is for new lines. I don't know what the R or the F stands for, if I'm being completely honest with you guys. It must be something involving some kind of spacing. So we're able to capture either all white space or all non-white space. Next is the W, which is the single word character or a non-word character, right? So if you want to capture an alphabetical character, A through Z, whether it's lowercase or capitalized, or at the same time capture anything from 0 to 9 or an underscore, you can use the W, or use the capital W to capture all non-word characters, right? So be careful when using these, right? Because this will capture numbers, and the underscore. But if you're only looking specifically for alphabetical characters, then you might want to specify lowercase a through z, capital case A through Z, right? So be aware of that. Finding a particular sequence, we talked about this already, right? A is starting and ending with H, E, and O, and then the dots. Find all. We kind of already talked about find all a little bit, how it returns a list of what it encounters, pattern to be matched. So it's a little bit different though, right? Where here, the first time we saw find all, right, we specified the actual word U, or we specified A through E, right? And notice that when using A through E, it returned just the single individual time that it encountered one of these characters, A through E, right? Individually. So E by itself encountered it 3 times, or actually 4 times. It encountered A, encountered D, but it didn't capture a word that had the characters of A through E consecutively, right? Whereas this is a little bit different. Notice that here is capturing any word that consists of the letters of A through Z, which is hello and world, right? It didn't return HELLO on its own individually. And that's because they use the plus sign, right? One or more occurrences, I believe is what it is, one or more occurrences of anything from A through Z together, right? So it encountered H, it encountered E, L, L, and O, right? And then it went to a space, so it didn't capture space, but it was able to capture multiple characters, right, together. Therefore, it was able to capture the whole word. So, depending how you use it, make sure what you're looking for, whether you're looking for one individual unique instance of it that you're encountering it, or if you're trying to find a conjoined word of the occurrences of these letters, right? So very specific. Find iterable with every match object. This one is the interesting one that I was trying to talk to you guys about, right? And this one kind of makes a little bit more sense. It returns an iterable with every match object. So here we have the string, hello, yellow, fellow, hello, mellow. We are using the command of find iterable, and they're looking for the word hello. Notice that they do a for loop to loop through what matches is, right? Well, what is it? It's an object. It is a list of objects. I thought Jason was like saying like, "Oh, I get it now," but he's yawning. So there is it's a list, right? It finds every occurrence of hello, it adds it to a list, but it creates an object of matches. We're able to look through this list of objects and we print out match. So every single object that we encounter with this list, we print it out. And you get something very familiar, kind of back to how what we were getting whenever we would print a raw object with no representational string thunder method. It would return to us some kind of object, right? And we get here that this is a regex match object. And we get 2 attributes that come with it. We get span and match, right? Span, it gives us a tuple of numbers, 0 and 5. This is telling you where it encountered this match. At index 0 up to index 5 is where it encountered hello. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5 up to, but not including it. That's where it encountered this specific match of hello, and it created this object, right? The next match that it encountered for hello was in span 19 to 24, which is the start of the H for hello and up to the spacing. It created objects of this, and we're able to loop through and be able to grab that. And this is kind of what I was trying to get at, what it was doing fairly similar to this, right? Notice that there is an attribute called match. That is what this in some form is doing, that it's grabbing some kind of group. It's under the hood, it's almost like an object that has an attribute of group. Does this make a little bit more sense, Tim? I couldn't really explain it because I'm not sure how the code is working. I just know that it's able to access certain things and save things to it. I'm sorry if I couldn't find a much better way of explaining this, but that's kind of what it's doing here. Very similar to how find iterable is working as well. That it's able to, whenever it captures a match or something, it's able to grab where it's at, and it has an attribute of match. That's kind of how that replace method is working too. It's able to grab a group. I just don't know exactly how it works under the hood, so I do apologize for that.
No, that makes sense.
So we're able to use find iterable. Here's that dot match that we mentioned, right? The dot match method does something very similar to find iterable. Dot match also returns an object, right, which has that match attribute of hello, right? And it has a span of where it's located at. So you're able to match certain things and then get it back. If it doesn't encounter it, notice that we have none. Whereas here, we have that we match hello at span 0.5. So it returns the match object only if it's the first in the string. So this is a little bit different, right? Where find iterable returns an iterable with every match object and returns only the first string if you're using dot match. I'm gonna be completely transparent with you guys. I haven't really used most of these, right? They're very situational based, right? So whatever you're looking for. I see Kenny. You say you're sorry you have to go. It's okay. Thank you, Kenny, for being here. You have a good rest of your day. But right, these are very unique, very situational based. So you might not always have a situation where you want to use these. It's just a small intro to show you how these work. You have a string, you use the method. All these methods, if you come to realize, they're creating something new. They're either creating a new string, they're either creating a list or some kind of object or something, right? So you want to kind of recreate a new variable where you can get the original, find what you're looking for, and then get an output. Dot match will return a match object only if it's the first in a string. Notice that here it didn't capture anything because hello was not the first one. It was somewhere within the string. Whereas here, it was able to capture the match because hello was at the start of the string that we're using the dot match method on. We also have a dot search method, which returns the first match object in the string, right? So it's almost like find all, right? But instead of grabbing every single one, it's going to grab the first match that it encounters, right? Here, we grab it on both of them, no matter where hello is. Whether hello is at the start, whether it appears once or twice. Here, it only appears once. It finds it at 1419. This time, it appears twice, once before Menlo, and then once after Menlo at the end of the string. But it doesn't capture this one. It only captures hello the first time it appears. So these are all very situational based, right? It's all going to depend on what you're looking for. Whether you're looking for one word, maybe every multiple occurrences or something. So it's going to be up to you guys of when you might find this useful. Dot split, it'll split your string up. This is actually a very good one, I must say. I've used this one or twice. It splits the string by using the pattern as the delimiter and returns a list. They should look fairly similar. We've seen dot split methods before. I think you could do this without using the regex module. There might be more functionality that goes into this method, but you're able to pass in what you want to split it with. Right, so here they're able to split it at every at symbol, and it returns a list of the entire string without the at symbol, right? Return that list of the string the string split up without that end symbol. So a very helpful tool if you want to split stuff up. Maybe split it all within like every space. We're able to grab specific attributes that are within the matches. So this is going back to the find iterable method, right? They were able to capture multiple matches of hello. They looped through the matches. And if you recall before, all they did was print out match, right? Here's the first time we saw this for match in matches, print match, and it prints out the entire object, right? Which had a couple attributes like span and match. Well, instead of printing out the entirety of that, this time they call the match and they use the dot span method, therefore only returning where they encounter these matches. Nothing of the other extra jargon like the match itself or the fact that it's an object itself. They're specifying I only want the dot span. Right? Now, we have get the start and end of indices as well. So these are another methods you can use. Match dot start, match dot end. It looks very similar to, as we see here, the span. So very similar, but you can specify without getting the what it looks like the open and close parentheses on our return. So dot span, it looks like it consists of a start and the end. So this looks like it returns the start and end of the span. So if you don't want to just get the whole span, you can just put dot start and you'll get where the it starts at, right? So you can specify both. You can say dot group as well, as we saw that already. Get specific number of characters in a row. For match dot match. Yeah, same thing. We saw this. The curly braces, you can limit of how many numbers, right? This one, it's trying to match a part of the string that's a digit with 4 occurrences of a digit. So it's able to capture 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right here, we're specifying 3 to 5 occurrences. I'm sorry. It looks like not occurrences. Yeah, it is occurrences, right? And it should work. And we see here that we have it prints out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but once again, it does not print out 14, right? Because there is the numbers of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 14. Here we specify 4, so it will get the 4. Once again, we can be very specific here of a start and end. So both these reach the same outcome from what it looks like. 1, 2, 4, 5, 1, 2, 4, 5, 3 to 5. Yep. So different ways of doing it, get specific numbers of characters in a row. Here's our first practice. Student practice vowels and domains. All right, let's go ahead and check it out. Vowels and domains. So there's 2 methods here. Write a function that uses a regex expression to return a list with all the words that start with a vowel. So first and foremost, I recommend get your string, right, without these quotation marks. And I want you to go into regex 101. You're gonna put your string in here, and this is where you're going to find out what your pattern is to reach the outcome of what you're looking for. Right? Write a function that uses a regex expression to return a list with all the words that start with a vowel. Right? Notice that we are able to capture errors unless and explicitly. So do some looking at it. You notice that these are some are capitalized, some are lowercase. and whatnot, and it's all within a list. So with that in mind, here is where you want to kind of come through, work here to find the output. Once you find the regex pattern, then I would come back here and actually put it in some code. But use regex 101 to kind of get the hard part, because it can be very difficult to try to visualize what you're getting and trying to continuously run your Python file to see if you captured it. Regex 101 is just a very helpful tool. So time is 7:27. Take 10 minutes to do both of these. They're very similar. At 7:37, return, or I guess go on break. We would actually return at 7:47 and continue with our lecture. I'll see you guys then. So before we broke off into a break, we assigned ourselves the vowels and domains.py. So we're gonna work on this real fast. We have our string, and we'll just name it input string, right? Input string is equal to whatever this is. And realistically, I could probably just comment out this, right? If I wanted to, but I'll just keep it here anyways. This is a string that I'm trying to use to kind of parse through, filter out, and capture what should be a list of everything that starts with a vowel. So I mentioned to y'all to use regex 101. So let's do that. I need to be able to capture errors unless and explicitly, right? So how do I do that? Well, they need to start with, let's go with, it needs to start with an A, E, okay, let's go with A, E, I, O, U. Okay. A set of characters in no specific order, right? Which is why I put them in brackets. If it wasn't in brackets, A, E, I, O, U, it would be looking for this specific pattern. But when in brackets, it's going to look for these characters anywhere, right? Matching a single character in the list so far. And I'm looking for one or more occurrence of this, which not really, actually. It needs to start with a vowel. Now, to ensure that I'm specifying it starting with an A, E, I, O, U, I'm going to go ahead and put the caret outside of it. But I'm not just looking for lowercase. I'm looking for A, E, I, O, U capitalized. And as you see here, I'm missing this one. So let's go ahead and remove this asterisk. But it needs to start with a lowercase or capitalized vowel followed by any character from A through Z, lowercase or capital case, which can appear one or more times. And we're getting somewhere, right? But now there's an issue here where I'm grabbing everything else, like pass. So we need to ensure how can we grab only a word and it has to be followed it can't start with something like this. Any thoughts? I guess we could do this as the end. Maybe end. No, it's not gonna like that.
I thought there was a backslash escape character that said it had to be that it would return the whole word, but I couldn't find what it was.
What do you mean the whole word?
Like one of the, you have slash D for digits.
Yeah.
I could have swore there was one for entire, it would return an entire word if you used it, but I couldn't figure out what that was.
Stand by. I got someone at the door. I'll be right back. I'm sorry. Sorry for that. My family got back. Now they'll be holding me down. All right. Let's go ahead and continue. So as of right now, our regular expression, it's starting with A-E-I-O-U, whether it's lowercase or capital case, which is good. We're looking for that, right? We got errors, but there's an issue here. That it's only going to find it once, right? I'm looking for one or more occurrences of this. It has to capture A-E-I-O-U, and then it has to be followed by any character from A through Z. And it can appear once or more, right? Which maybe it would be better if we do a plus sign, right? In the event we have like a word that's like A between one or limited times. This is zero more, right? Yeah, zero. Okay, yeah. So we'll asterisk, right? Because what if they said like error should be a something, right? So in case we find that, there should be zero more occurrences. And then what needs to happen is we need to be able to grab this as many times as possible. So maybe doing something like this. Errors. We're getting somewhere, right? Because right here, when I do this group, I'm able to grab errors should never pass on pretty much everything, but I'm grabbing some that I don't necessarily want. Right? I'm grabbing and to start with it. And I think that's where I'm going wrong here. Is by putting start, it's referring to the start of the string. But I want you to look for a word that starts with A-I-O-U, which I guess this will work. But notice that there's an issue with the fact that it's capturing stuff that has a word prior to it, like pass, never, and that's not good. So maybe we put like N with. No. Did anyone find a working match here?
Nope.
I wonder what did they do to grab this one? Huh. Okay. A word boundary. Okay. The solution I found, which I'll never do with this, is using a backward slash B. And the way that it works is You use /B. It asserts a position at a word boundary. Matching without consuming any characters a word boundary. Ensures we match a word boundary or essentially the start of a word. And it needs to start with A, E, I, O, U. A, E, I, O, U, capitalized. All right, so then we're finding out that we're able to grab just these three. And I'm not quite sure exactly how this /B works. /B matches without consuming any characters immediately between a character matched by /W and a character not matched with /W in either word. So this will work from my search. I'm gonna be completely honest with you guys. I do not know how this is working. I'm gonna have to do my own research on this /B and the /W because I am fairly inexperienced in this one.
So I'm guessing the boundary, I mean, it's using the spaces to separate, I guess, the words with maybe the /B. Is that kind of what I'm thinking
Yeah,
he's doing? So it's pretty much take it as long as it starts with a vowel and then pretty much any other character. And it's kind of insulating that. So it's just pulling up the words as long as they start with a vowel and any letters after the vowel.
yeah. So here we're doing the W, but it's essentially saying A through Z, right? Same concept. What really is making this work is this /B, which stands for boundary. Assert position at a word. It will separate everything else. And this is working unlike before where we did this. This literally specified the start of the entire string.
Yeah.
It is
Yeah.
not specifying that, hey, the words we're looking for are starting with A, E, I, O, U, right? So that's where the issue was that we couldn't capture multiple occurrences of these. And I don't know why it was giving so much issues even when using the match. A little frustrating. But that's okay. Now, let's see the other one. Write a function that uses a regular expression to return a list of emails that all have the domain of gmail.com. I'm going to let you guys try this one out because we just saw this one. You guys need 5 minutes? 5 minutes, okay?
Okay.
Yeah, probably.
All right. Camera's on once you're done. How'd it go?
Yeah.
I
guess.
had go ahead.
Oh, I mean, another thing I don't understand is even though you gave us the, you found a regular expression, I don't even know how I would implement that in VS Code, for it to work.
Okay. Let me go and share my screen. Which am I sharing already? I am.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm talking about even for the first problem. So you can't say that you have the regular expression to pull, the words that we want, but I wouldn't even know how to replicate that in VS Code.
Which one of these methods that we see returns to us a list of all the matches that we found? Well, let's go through them. We have the first one we did was sub, which substituted.
Yeah.
We then had replace and
I mean,
no, not replace. We had find all returns a
yeah.
list.
Yeah, I tried that and I tried to paste the expression in and it still didn't seem to work.
Okay. Well, let's see it. We have the string here. I'm copying verbatim the syntax, right?
Yeah.
We have re.find all. So first and foremost, let me go ahead and import regular expressions. Import re, so I can use the regular expression. I'm gonna say output is equal to re.find all. And find all scans the string right from left to right, searching for all non-overlapping matches of the pattern or string that is passed in. right? And it returns a list of matches. So I'm going to pass it my handy dandy algorithm. And I believe I need OR here more likely. There we go. R. I think I need OR. We'll see. And then I'm going to pass in the string, which is input string. And now I'm going to go ahead and print out output. What does it do? Well, there you have it. Errors, unless, and explicitly. Let me remove this R just in case if this is what's going on with you. And that's it, what it is. You're missing this R, and that's probably my fault, to be fair. It's not in here in the example, so I do apologize. It does not specify here on the slides. And the only reason I remembered was because of this. When we set this to Python, it set this up how it should be written in Python, which is that R method. I completely forgot about it. So you need R. But there you have it. With that, pretty much almost 99% verbatim to the slides, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah, I think that's what happened. I didn't have the R. That's what was
Mhm.
frustrating me.
That's okay. That's my fault. I take full responsibility. I apologize. I should have been a little bit more specific with that one. It went over my head. Well, regardless, were you guys able to encounter the pattern to grab this? Yes or no?
Honestly, I barely messed with that. I was struggling most of the time to get to work in VS Code. Even I sort of tried, but that's not where most of my time went, unfortunately.
Okay.
I got hung
Tim?
up.
I misread the instructions and thought I was doing something different. Restarted halfway through and just did the re.split method.
Okay. All right. Well, let's look at this one. We need to capture what? Let me see that readme real quick. Write another function that uses a regular expression to return a list of emails that all have the domain of gmail.com. So this is what it looks like initially. And then this is the output. It is pretty much the exact same as the input with one thing that's different. We replace the domain name all to gmail.com. So it sounds like which one of these methods do we need to use?
Re.sub.
Maybe read.sub, yeah. I think so. Yeah, I think sub's gonna be our best bet here. So let's first figure it out, the pattern, and then we'll do the code. Someone start me off. How can we grab specifically, or as a matter of fact, we can even use the substitute method. Let's go ahead and do sub. So here's the expression that we're going to be putting in. This is a string. And here is what we're going to replace it with. And it's going to show us the output. So how can we grab, first and foremost, the domain name?
Starts with at.
Sure. We can say it
And ends with
start.
doc and adds and ends with .com. So essentially we want to replace whatever's in the middle of that with Gmail.
So it's going to start with at, right? Like this.
Oh, no. Hmm. That's
Oh,
good.
no. So no, 'cause that's going to go for the very first character in the entirety of the string.
And let's just do this for now. At, and then what?
And it has to end with a space. No,
It,
with a dot. No, so it would be an asterisk.
uh, This is like the peanut butter and jelly sandwich video, right? So what's my expression going to look like? It's going to have the at symbol, which as we already see, it's capturing the ats. What's next? How do I specify to only grab that part? We already started. It's specifically grabbing the at symbol right now, the way that my pattern is described. Hey, grab this, which is good. It's doing it. And then it has to be followed by what? Well, as we see here, what
The asterisk. Oh, yeah, a dot, then the asterisk.
is it? The dot?
Yeah, because it could be anything.
The dot.
And 0 more occurrences. So anything in between the at symbol and com.
That's what that is to say. 0 more occurrences. The asterisk. This saying, hey, I want to grab any character, even spaces, and I want to grab as many appearances of that it appears. Okay, so what's the next part?
I'm just gonna say com. Like COM.
Let's see, what do we do? It's gonna start with an A. We're looking for anything between A through Z, one or more occurrences. And it looks like for this example, it's grabbing that. And then it's gonna be followed by the dot. Afterwards, it's gonna follow specifically by com. I can specify com, or I can be anything like A through Z, right? However you want to specify it. But just this right here, this pattern, this is saying, hey, the pattern I'm looking for starts with an at symbol. It is then followed by the characters A through Z, where it might occur one time, no times, or more time. But honestly, it shouldn't be 0 or unlimited times. It should be 1 or unlimited. So this probably needs to be a plus sign, right? Because there has to be something that comes after the at to tell me what the domain name is. This should not be 0 or more. This should be 1 or more occurrences of something, right? So asterisk is probably not the best way to go about this. We might want to use a plus sign. So at least there's something that precedes the at symbol that is between the at and the period. Afterwards, I need to specify that what comes after these characters needs to be the period, right? Because we need to specify whether it's a .com, .net, .org, .mil, right? So we use the /dot to as an escape character to specify, hey, this is not, because remember, the dot is a meta character that specifies matches any character except for line terminators or like new lines, right? We talked about this. So it's a reserved character. So to make sure that we don't specify, hey, this is a reserved character, we need to put a / to treat it as nothing but a simple period. Make sense? And therefore, we grab everything between the at symbol and the period. Grabbing this. So that's how we grab that. Now we need to give it a substitute. What are we going to substitute with? Well, it needs to be substituted with Gmail dot. And this is the output. Let's give it a try. Coming back here. I'm going to go ahead and say input. Actually, I'll just input string. Sure. I'm going to grab my handy dandy string. And now I'm going to say output is equal to re.sub. I'm going to put in my pattern. Let's go ahead and bring this bad boy in. Which actually I can just do copy to clipboard as well. And I can put that in here directly. I don't know if I like that. Never mind. Here we go. Let's just do this. Comma. But what am I trying to replace it with? This right here. Put in parentheses. And I'm going to pass in the string, which is going to be input string. and let's print out output. And here you have it. AABBBCCCC with the gmail.com.
The reason I did this completely wrong from the beginning is the instructions, it says the output is in a list.
Sure.
So I didn't, and it doesn't say, it does say create a regex expression, but it doesn't say using one of those like one of those pattern recognition expressions. So I just did, I split the items into a list and then appended an re.split rec to find at and dot and took the first index of that and added Gmail to it.
Yeah. So you're absolutely right. It's splitting it into a list. Well, what did we use that we can use to split? I think it's actually specifically called dot split.
Yeah,
Right here.
re does split.
Yeah, we can split it up. At every space, it would split it up, and then we can just run this per each string and get it. We can loop through the list. I mean, so extra steps, but yes, that's good. Regardless, it doesn't really change it, right? This would be like list of words. It's equal to re.split. I want to split it at every space. What am I splitting? I'm splitting my input string. Therefore, this will return a list of words. I can print this out. Print list of words. And let me go ahead and just comment these out for now. And here's my list of words, exactly how they should be. And then what I can do is, and you guys have learned enough of Python to understand this, say for word, a list of words. I'm going to grab every single word. I'm going to say new word is equal to re.sub, pass in my regex. Right, pass in my regex, pass in my substitute, which is going to be at Gmail dot, and then pass in word. It's going to replace that word and then add it to a new list. Right, this is all basic Python syntax. Right, nothing changed. The only thing difference is you just have to split the word into multiple words and then just loop through them. Right, different methods. But yeah, I can say like final list is equal to an empty list. As I grab every single new word, I'm going to append it to final list dot append new word. And then finally, I should be able to print final list. Let's get rid of all this extra stuff. Let's see how this works. Let me just get it here. Same thing. Now it's in a list. Make sense?
Yeah, no,
Nothing.
that's fine.
Yeah.
I don't know, for some reason, I don't know why my code isn't working. Like I mean, I'm saying even the one prior, I'm not sure why it's not printing the out gmail.com. It's just literally just printing out the input string. I don't know, like it's like I'm doing like looking up and down, see what you got, what I got. I don't know why it's not working.
Are you
Sure.
actually calling the function? Because I did that and I changed my code like 8 times and I realized at the end I was just saying print string instead of print function string, with the string being the argument.
Show your code.
Okay.
But does that make sense, Tim? Does it kind of like clear up a little bit more?
Oh no, I wasn't confused. I just was annoyed that I read it, the instructions wrong and did it a
That,
different way.
that's okay. It happens to the best of us. You have re.sub. You are substituting. Let's see.
Why are you doing a forward slash at?
Why do you have that forward slash at the end and the forward slash in the beginning?
Maybe that's what's doing it. I think that's just how it copied over, maybe. Okay, there we
Maybe.
go. Okay.
Yeah, you were probably not getting empty because it was probably capturing the whole thing. I don't know. Oh,
Yeah.
my friend. I'm gonna stop you right here.
Okay.
No, go back,
Okay.
go back to regex 101.
Okay. Oh. Oh, that's why.
Yep. That's
Okay.
why.
Okay, so if I copy this, it might just work.
Now copy this. I don't know what that GM is, if I'm being honest with you. Just make
But
sure we're
it's probably just like a flag.
I believe it is a flag. Whenever you put it, just make sure you add this arc because obviously you're not copying the whole arc, but you want to copy just that pattern and just make
Yeah.
sure, as you see, it's within double quotes as well, which you already have. That's how it should be. It's just that you got those forward slashes because you had it on the wrong setting, right? So
Okay.
when you copied it, it copies some additional stuff that you don't need. But
Okay.
you're on the right track.
Okay.
Right? Sound good?
Yeah.
All right, right on. Let's see. That was vowels and domains. There's more capture groups. We have regex practice. Regex practice is an abundance of different things. If you want more regex practice, which I'm sure a bunch of you guys do, if you go here, well, I'm not sharing, am I? Am I sharing?
No.
Okay. So regex practice is just a Python file that has nothing but regex questions. I think there's 20 of them. So if you feel like you need more practice and you will like more practice, you can come here and you can do these regex questions. You'll get all the practice you need. I'm not gonna sit here and let you go through them and just wait and waste time. This is gonna be some homework for you guys, right? If you feel like you want to know more about regex, definitely give these a try. Some of these are simple, some of them are not. Use regex 101 to come up with the pattern, and they kind of come here and add your code, very similar to how we were doing on vowels and domains, right? So if you feel like you need more practice, definitely check out regexpractice.py, right? That is in lesson 14. Sound good?
Yep.
All right, right on. Let's go ahead and finish and get to the rest of our curriculum with the remainder of time that we have left. And it's going to be ASCII values. ASCII, ASC, and I think these are, I don't think these are I's, if I'm being honest with you. But it's pronounced ASCII. Oh, it is I's. ASCII stands for American Standard Code for Information Interchange. It's based on the idea of using numbers to represent text. This matter, entire blocks of text can be represented by a series of numbers that can easily be stored in a computer's memory. And here's a small little chart. We can pull up a bigger one. But notice that you have A, and it goes all the way through Z, and there is a numerical value to each one of these letters. Notice also that the capital letters are different than the lowercase letters. They both have their own individual value. So a capital A is not the same as a lowercase a, right? A capital A is a value 65, lowercase is 97. Each one of these characters have their own individual numerical value. If you want to see the full scale, you can look up ASCII table, and it's pretty big. It looks something fairly similar to this. And you can see it all. You have no start heading, end of text, even some weird stuff like escape, substitute, cancel, a space, right? An actual space has a value. Then it goes to like exclamation marks, quotation marks, either double quotes or single quotes, parentheses, everything that you can think of pretty much has your own representational value. And that's what we're referring to when we talk about ASCII value. This is what it's talking about. Oh, here's the same table. 128 characters. ASCII is a subset of Unicode. Unicode is a universal character representation for text and computer processing regardless of platform, device, application, or language. You probably rarely ever have to use the ASCII values of characters, letters, but it's just to know that it exists and it's a thing, right? You are able to convert characters into their ASCII value and ASCII values back into their actual character representation. And here's how. In Python, you can use the OR method that turns a character into its ASCII value. Notice the first code snippet. We have a string of ABC saved into the variable name alpha lower. We loop through the characters of this string, and every time that we print out this character, we're wrapping it around the order method. And notice, instead of printing out the actual character itself, it's printing out its ASCII value 97, 98, 99. And then vice versa. We get a list of numbers here. We iterate through this list. As we go through every single number, we use the CHR, the character method, to convert it into its respective character value. So the capital letters A, B, and C, which are represented by the ASCII values of 65, 66, and 67, you're able essentially to typecast between ASCII and their actual character value. Pretty cool, huh? What you can also do is you can convert, for example, I can convert A, B, and C into their ASCII values, which are now technically integers. I can do math to them. For example, if the lowercase value of A is 97, if I subtract, I don't know what's the difference between 97 and 65 off the top of my head, but I can subtract some kind of number and then get that number, convert it back to its character value, and it would give me a new different character. Let's go with calculator 97. What's the one? Minus 65. Oh my god, nope. 97 minus 65. So if I subtract 32 from 97, I should get 65. Therefore, I can then convert 65 into its ASCII variation. And I should now get the capital letter for it. So you're able to convert different characters into different other characters by changing them into their ASCII representation, doing some quick math, and so on and so forth. ASCII use cases for coding challenges that ask you to shift certain characters in the alphabet. So converting the characters to their ASCII values and applying some arithmetic can solve this type of problem. For general awareness, ASCII was the first major character encoding system for data processing. And that's pretty much it in regards to ASCII. You have a small little assignment that you can check out. It's called ASCII practice. It's nothing crazy. I think it's just converting them back and forth. Right? You write a function that takes in a string of lowercase letters in an integer list of the same length. The function should shift all the letters in the string along the alphabet X number of times based on each integer in the list. All right, so this is a little problem that you can use if you want to go over ASCII values. Which, as a matter of fact, we're going to do this one. We'll take 15 minutes. We'll come back, code it out, and we'll call it a day. If you finish earlier, then come back on camera. Since there's only one ASCII problem, then we'll go ahead and do it. I'll see you guys in 15 minutes or earlier, depending how fast you finish. I forgot to record, but essentially, we're not going to go ahead and talk any further on that assignment. That's actually a lot harder than I initially expected, and we don't have enough time to really cover it, especially in depth. So I'm just saying that for the record. Since
I'll say, I guess I would say enough that pre-work questions had enough of these types of questions that where you did have to use ASCII values and the CHR and the ORD. You know, that this is kind of just like an extra difficult problem that, you know, I think we got the main gist of, you know, ASCII values. You know, that this isn't overly important.
No, for sure. If I'm being completely honest with you, this question isn't testing your ASCII values. If anything, it's actually testing like your algorithm skills, right? So in regards to ASCII proficiency, it's as simple as just wrapping something around the OR function or the char function to get it to do what you want. So it's okay. No harm, no foul. But that's going to conclude today's lesson and recording. And also, it's going to include the entirety of the Foundations of Programming course. Tomorrow, it's not going to be a recorded lecture because we're not doing anything in regards to the lesson plan. That's going to be more of a off-camera thing that we'll be having, or Q&A and preparing for the immersive program. But besides that, just for the record, thank you everybody for following along through the YouTube channel. I see the videos, the views. So I know people are watching. They've been, trading along. I know we started a little bit higher in numbers. There was like, I think 70 or 80 views on the first video. It came down to 20, 30 for the most recent ones, but there are still people that were committed and made it all the way through. I'm talking; these are people that are currently going to be in your cohort. These are people that are probably doing the evening and weekend. They might be doing DevOps, or they're future applicants that have stumbled across our YouTube channel. But thank you guys. Thank you, Jason and Tim, for making it all the way. Props to you guys. It always happens this way. I usually, on average, start with 5 to 8 people, and I almost always end with 2. So I
So
think it's kind of funny.
so what happens if like everybody drops out? Like let's just say you finish it out and like nobody's showing up.
If no one shows up, I will still record the video. It's just gonna be really, really sad.
I mean, you're still getting paid, I guess. So.
Right? Like I'm being taught to do this. I will record the video. It will go on YouTube. Ain't nobody gonna be here listening to it, but they're gonna be following along. So, even if it's just one of you guys, it'll probably be a short class, but I'll be here and I have no problem giving you some one-on-one. But yeah, so that's technically what would happen, right? So I'm getting paid to teach this. I'm gonna teach it. Ain't my fault. You guys didn't show up. Simple as that. But for you guys, thank you guys for showing up and being consistent. I promise you, this is going to pay off in the future. I mean, this is a free course, right? This comes along with the fact that you already accepted into Platoon, so why not take advantage of it? People are like, so the intention of this programming was to hopefully try to get students to get time away from work, right? The intention was this will be added as a requirement for your skill bridge, and even though it's an evening program, you would still get your time off, if that makes sense, right?
I, I
But
mean, I mean, my squadron wasn't going to release me any longer than they did. Like they would not have given me a month longer to do this class.
Yep, and that's what happens. That's unfortunate, right? So, and I feel like it's more of a disconnect between us, like our marketing, and like the people that handle this stuff in the actual army or military. I feel like we forget because we've been out for so long that like they don't care. Like a lot of times, what happens is even until your last day, they're making you do stuff, whether it's staff duty, right? Whether it's some dumb detail, they're wasting your time, right? Even if you're like out processing, they still expect you to show up for PT, right? It can be the last day you're picking up your D214, but there you are taking a physical fitness exam. Like that's how it is. And I feel like we forget that because we've been out for a while, or some of us more than others. But I mean that's the nature of the occupation. But yeah, so that was the intent. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen, right? As we just talked about. But you have the evening, right? So you have the evening. It's not like it's being taught during the day. We wanted to make it like a thing where you can get some time off, but unfortunately that doesn't happen. But for you guys that I made it through YouTube specifically, Kenny also, he camera off, but it's okay. I'm assuming he's just a very shy guy. But for you guys that showed up here consistent, uh, good on you guys. Thank you for being patient with me, helping me out, and also the fact that you guys are staying on camera. It makes it easier to teach, and I don't think people realize that it's pretty difficult when I'm just looking at my face at the time, and I just got cameras are off. Like I don't know if people are just like walking around, they have their headphones on, washing dishes. Like what am I doing? Just teaching this for them. But without any more waste of time, let me go ahead and stop the recording.